Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today is one of those days that Disney is really proving that they kind of have a monopoly when it comes to blockbusters. Not only are we talking about the new Alice Through the Looking Glass trailer over on the main Beyond the Trailer channel, but today we have other news stories to discuss, and they all happen to be about Disney movies. We have 2 Star Wars stories, and then also a first look, a muted first look at Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. Not in his Doctor Strange getup, like pre-transformation, and that's why it's not quite the headline grabber that a shot of him in costume would be. And then, of course, we do have the viewer question. But I just think it's interesting that Disney just has so many brands, and they're very good at keeping them separate. Like, it doesn't seem like we're talking about the same thing, but we are. Evil corporate laugh, ha 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 ha. Also, first off, before we get into the stories, I just want to remind you that you have until the end of the day tomorrow to tweet me for that Dolby Atmos giveaway. If you want the set of Blu-rays, both The Fifth Element and The Professional, 2 of Luc Besson's most famous films, you have to tweet me at Grace Randolph, and you have to include the hashtag Dolby Atmos, and then you have to include the hashtag for one of the films. Both if you want to try and really impress me, but you have to include either hashtag The Fifth Element or hashtag The Professional. And then you have to tell me why you think Luc Besson is such a good director. And then the top 3 will get a set, the Blu-ray set again of the remastered version of both films, not only with 4K visuals, but of course Dolby Atmos sound design. All right, so let's kick off with the first of our 2 Star Wars stories, and that's that these new posters debuted. You can see them here. Obviously, the Princess Leia one is the best one, right? I wonder if she's still a princess. It would be weird to call someone who was older a princess, but then tell that to Princess Anne, right? I mean, it happens. It happens in real life. But the reason I like it so much is that I'm very curious to see how they have Leia, how she's matured. I hope she still has some of her spunk left in her, as I said in my shot-by-shot review of the final trailer. And it seems that she does, based on this poster. She's given that little Leia smirk there, right? That Han Solo knows all too well. And I like the green light around her because it's clearly very much like those the interface that she has used in the movies before, and as we know they're using now, to strategize the rebellion, right? And I think that's great. I mean, Leia is a princess, but she's also a leader, one of the leaders of the rebellion, and she's a strategist. People were talking about her actually recently. We'll go into the whole Slave Leia conversation in just a moment. But anyway, that's my favorite poster because of that. Not only it's the most new thing that they reveal with these posters, but I'm curious to see what they do with Leia. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. So she looks very cool. Carrie Fisher looks great. You can see shadows of a crazy hairstyle off just outside of the frame. I'm sure we'll see it in all its glory in the movie. J.J. Abrams doesn't even want you to see that. He's like, you want to see crazy hair? Pay to see the movie. But anyway, the other ones, you've got, interestingly enough, there's always been some rumors that Rey will be the new Jedi, but the fact that she didn't get a lightsaber in her poster, but Finn did, I really do feel that Finn is probably going to be the new Jedi. Stormtrooper turned Jedi. Talk about a promotion. And then you have Kylo Ren, of course, and then Han Solo. The Han Solo one looks the weirdest because it doesn't look like something's covering his face. It looks like some weird Photoshop. It doesn't quite work. But we'll see. Han Solo, obviously, pretty much everyone's favorite character from the original trilogy, so I'm very curious to see what they do with him in the movie. But I think that Daisy Ridley looks cool as well. So they all look cool, but again, nothing new except for the Princess Leia thing, which is why that's my favorite of the posters. But let's move into the second story of the day, and that's this whole Slave Leia controversy. So apparently she was interviewing Daisy Ridley, and she blindsided Lucasfilm by saying, "Don't be a slave, Daisy Ridley. Fight for your costume." Apparently meaning that all these years, Carrie Fisher has regretted playing Slave Leia. And Disney had like a knee-jerk reaction, apparently, where they were like, whoa, no more Slave Leia. And word has gotten out that there will not only be no more Slave Leia merchandise or the character depicted in anything Star Wars going forward, but apparently someone at Marvel said we're not even allowed to draw Leia in a sexy pose, which I think is ridiculous, by the way. I mean, you're going to draw Han Solo in sexy poses too, right? So it just seems ridiculous to me. I mean, comic book characters and movie characters strike sexy poses. That's the nature of the biz. Romance is a big part of the fantasy of movies. And to say that Princess Leia can never be seen looking sexy is ridiculous. Now, as for Slave Leia, how do I feel about Slave Leia? Well, let's talk about this. I have to say, they tried to talk in this coverage about saying how, well, Leia has a lot going for her, and Leia is a really great character that deserves to not just be seen as Slave Leia. But let me say that Slave Leia is like the most popular incarnation of Princess Leia. This is what everybody loves the most. The public has spoken over decades, and they always prefer Slave Leia. Whenever Princess Leia is shown anywhere, it's always in her slave outfit, right? And I don't think Carrie Fisher should be so upset about the way that worked out, because that the time period the movie was made. It's not like she had to do any nudity. And again, it was well received. No one's felt bad about Slave Leia. I've never seen anyone say anything bad about Slave Leia ever. Women love dressing up as Slave Leia at Comic-Con. So the fact that Carrie Fisher put a negative spin on it all of a sudden, I think is not a great thing. It's like, Carrie Fisher, that's not yours. It's a role you inhabited, but it really belongs to the fans, especially so much later. And I think that as long as they do something different with Rey, but although you never know what the public's going to spark to. I think that Captain Phasma is by far and away more gotten more attention from the public, and she's in full body armor, by the way, than Rey has. So you just never know. You never know. So I think you do the best that you can, and and that's why it's so dangerous, by the way, for they're shooting episode 8 now. I think they should have waited to see, because this is new, to see how the public reacted to episode 7 and what they liked the most. I would have just, taken a little bit of the hit in terms of you have Rogue One coming out. It's not like nothing's going to happen. I really would have liked for them to have seen what landed and what doesn't. Or, everything's going to hopefully land, but what gets closest to like the bullseye. And I think Captain Phasma is going to get pretty darn close. But anyway, with Slave Leia, I have to say that I don't think women have ever particularly liked Princess Leia, right? I mean, Princess Leia just didn't really catch on with female audiences. Not like other female characters or Disney princesses to that degree, right? But even someone like Captain Phasma, right? Or Harley Quinn or Wonder Woman. These are characters that women have really sparked to. Katniss Everdeen in the Hunger Games. I don't think women really like Princess Leia. I think they like Star Wars, and she's the only female character, so they're like, yeah, of course I like her, because that's the role that I would be, if I'm going to insert myself into this universe. But I just think that there's something about the way that the character was written and the way Carrie Fisher played her. She wasn't a bundle of fun, right? I mean, I think to some degree people always were like, I wonder why Han Solo likes Princess Leia. I guess just because it's to just to stick it to Luke Skywalker, basically, right? But, I just don't think she's ever been a character that outside of the Slave Leia outfit has really inspired a lot of people to be fans of hers. So I don't really think there's a lot to point to. It's not like they're detracting from anything. So I think, Slave Leia, that's who Leia is. She's a really important figure in the history of film and the history of female characters. But let's just focus on, Rey and Captain Phasma and whoever Lupita Nyong'o is playing, whenever other characters might pop up. I just think that's the direction that we should go in. And I think it's important not to do this retroactive revisionist history with the way things are viewed today, right? I mean, it is what it is, and no one had a problem with it, and I would just leave it alone. And I wouldn't get rid of Slave Leia whatsoever. Because also, here's this, little girls out there. Sometimes you are abducted by someone and turned into a slave and tied to a chain and made, and that's like Princess Leia had it easy compared to what happens horrifically to some women. And I don't think that you should make it seem like the world is all hearts and flowers. I think that Slave Leia was like a real thing, and, you should know that that's out there and that women can be objectified in such a manner. And as far as women liking Princess Leia, some people might be like, well, they dress up as her at Comic-Con, right? It's like, no, they're aware that guys really like the Slave Leia costume, and they, want to appeal to that. They want to, they know that's popular. And so that's how my feelings on Slave Leia. I think it's a complicated situation. Well, actually, I don't think it's that complicated. I think Carrie Fisher made it complicated, and I'm curious how you feel about it. All right, so let's move on to our first look at Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange. And as some people have pointed out, that is one fake glued-on beard that he's sporting there. But I have to say, what's interesting to me the most about it is they've allowed Benedict Cumberbatch to look so much older. I mean, he's not a new actor. He's not like an ingenue that's just come on the scene. He's not Taron Egerton. But I think that he doesn't need to be made to look so much older. I mean, if I were his agent, I'd be like, do we have to have the under-eye puffiness? Just let me go in there and fix that, please. And also so much white in his beard. I'd be like, come on, you're killing me. I have to get this guy work after this. But I am very pleased that they have brown hair, not black, like he sports in Sherlock, because I think it's really important he not look too much like Tony Stark. I don't know if you're reading the new Iron Man comic that Brian Michael Bendis is writing. If you're not, you should. It's spectacular. But they recently had him interacting with Doctor Strange, and the artist, unfortunately, really couldn't draw two different enough people, and it just looked like Tony Stark was both characters, right? You're like, you're talking to yourself, and one is the mystical Tony Stark, one is the science Tony Stark. So it was a little bit weird, and it underlined the limitations of comic book art. But anyway, it also how similar the two characters are. And also the new Doctor Strange comic, they do seem to be making him very Tony Stark-like there, and I'm not happy about that at all. I'm not in love with the new Doctor Strange comic. It's like the inverse. Although I like the art from Chris Bachalo, so I'm still reading it. But it's not as good as the new Iron Man by Brian Michael Bendis. Everything that man's pen touches turns to gold. But I think that Benedict Cumberbatch, what I do like about this, though, is that it's very British explorer in the Far East, right? That's like been a big part of British culture. Even today, people taking, like, I just was reading about Camilla's brother, who unfortunately had a tragic passing away. There's a great article about him in Vanity Fair talking about he was really big in India and saving the elephants. And so even today, you have, England is very much involved in Asia, which I'm sure Asia has mixed feelings about. But so to see Benedict Cumberbatch kind of play up that, I think is very cool. So that looks great. He's in Nepal, obviously also where Mount Everest is. And so I saw Everest recently. And that was interesting. But you can see, and also these shots aren't very, very interesting at all. I'm just scrolling through them very quickly. But what's interesting on this one, the only other shot I like, is that his hand looks almost claw-like there. And of course, the origin story of Doctor Strange is that he's in a horrible accident. He's like a really pompous surgeon, but he breaks his hands in a car accident. So he can no longer be a surgeon. So he has to decide, what to do with his life. He's lost because that's what he did. He was like, that was who he was. It defined him. So now he has to find a new definition. And of course, it's mystical and it's fighting, bad, evil villains, whatever. But I like that they're playing up on that. And you can see in some of the other shots, his hands are bandaged. His fingers aren't bandaged. I would have gone for the whole finger thing, but right now just his hands are bandaged. But it looks very cool, and I'm glad he doesn't look like Sherlock, because I think it's important for him to start trying to separate himself a little bit from that character. By the way, look at that. That is one filthy coat. Kudos to the costume designer for, doing such a great job making that coat look absolutely filthy and disgusting. But it looks great. He looks good. I like it. I think it looks good. But I'm curious, what do you think of this? And what do you think of this as our first look at Doctor Strange? Damn you exterior shots, you ruin it, but it's great for us to be able to talk about them. And so finally today, I have a viewer question from BTT viewer Donna Keating, who had a really interesting question I thought a number of you would enjoy. So Donna said, "Hey Grace, love your videos. Hope your leg's okay." Thank you, Donna. It is doing much better. Thank you for asking. Thank you, everyone. Everyone's been really nice following up on that, and I really appreciate it. But I'm doing much better. Thank you. So Donna says, "I can sit down. It's not horribly painful." It was painful to sit down for both the press screenings of Spectre and Peanuts, but luckily those movies were good enough to overcome the intense pain that I was in sitting in the theater. But anyway, so Donna says, "I have a question for you. I live in Australia, and it seems to me that Australia doesn't have much of an impact on movies' box office. So I was wondering which 6 countries contribute the most to a movie's box office and where Australia would place. Thanks. Love your vids. Keep them coming. You've inspired me to be like you." That's like the highest compliment, Donna. I'm honored, and thank you so much. And if I can be at all inspirational to you, in even the tiniest little degree, again, I'm incredibly humbled and honored. So Donna, great question. So I think this is, I'm going to give you the, let's see, how many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, I have 6, and Australia falls just outside of the 6, I'm afraid. But this, this can change, this can jockey a little bit, but this is the general way that Hollywood views the different the foreign box office, right? Now, when they talk about foreign box office, it's just one giant chunk, right? But foreign box office is getting more and more potent, so Hollywood's actually starting to pay attention to specific countries because they can change the happy ending. They can change a sad ending in the U.S. box office to a happy worldwide box office ending. So obviously, the most influential country is China, where they can not only deliver a big gross for a movie, but sometimes a movie can make more in China than it does in the United States. Now, Hollywood doesn't get all that money because the things in China are a little bit underhanded, but still, that whole number does count toward the record book, so that's valuable. And then Hollywood does get part of the China box office. Eventually, China's a little slow in paying it. But anyway, China, number 1. Then really it's the Asian, the trio, the Asian trio. You've got China, then Japan, and then South Korea. All three countries are very influential in box office, and it's why you're seeing a lot of Asian influences. Come to think of it, there are very strong Asian influences in Alice Through the Looking Glass, perhaps to appeal to that region of the world and their box office dollars. After those three, next comes, I think Mexico and Russia are basically on an even playing field in terms of box office deliverables. So it goes Asia, China, Japan, and South Korea, and then Mexico and Russia. Then next, I would have to actually say, Donna, the UK and Australia are about tied. Sometimes one does better than the other, but you guys are about, and ironically so, because of course, Australia was originally populated, well, not originally, of course, they have their indigenous people, but it was a penal colony for the UK. But you guys are on par in terms of your box office deliverables. So that's really, and actually Australia is the last country to really make it into Hollywood's radar, with the specific countries they're paying attention to. So again, China, Japan, and South Korea are the first group, then Mexico and Russia are the second group, and then the UK and Australia are the third group. Then Hollywood starts to look at things as regions. There's the South American box office, and they take all those countries and they put them together. Then there's Europe, and they take all the European countries outside of the UK, like France, Germany, Spain, etc., the Netherlands, and they put them all together. And that's basically the way the box office, that's the way Hollywood breaks off down the foreign box office these days. So I hope that's illuminating to you, Donna. Thank you so much for such a great question. Thank you again for such a wonderful comment about me. And I hope that, you're just having a great day. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below what you think today's top 3 stories and that viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions that you might have, and of course, don't forget to tweet me if you want to be entered for that chance to win that wonderful Blu-ray set from our friends at Dolby Atmos. Thanks for watching. Bye.